Welcome back. You're watching 101 East, and this week we come to you from Jakarta, where we're discussing the issue of corruption in Indonesia and what it means for the rest of Asia. Angelina, just before the break, Eduardo was talking about how Indonesia has improved in terms of its crackdown on corruption. We have seen some high-profile arrests. Is there no sense of being held accountable amongst these politicians?
If we see the politician nowadays, there is not only KPK is watching over every details of meetings, every budget meetings, and then even to the, the very details budget, they put their eye on executive and even legislative. And I think we really have to appreciate, I know what Ms. REZKI has been talking about, that maybe the government is not done enough. But if we're going to expect the corruption is going to be get rid of within only 2 years, I think it's not also possible. But we see the concentration of the government also to put high budget on the program of good and clean governments. It's also a good signal that the government is really want to focus on the corruption. And I think we never see Indonesia been talking about corruption as hot as today's issues.
Well, you keep mentioning that in the last 2 years we've seen this cleanup, this crackdown against corruption. How much is it, though, related to trying to boost the chances for President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono's re-election? He came to power in 2004. Why is it only in this last 2 years that we're seeing a real crackdown now?
Because within the first 2 years of his government, he tried to put the foundation first, to clean the executive branch. It's not as easy as we thought. I think now there is more people are afraid to do the corruption, compared to 4 years before. And I think this is a good symptoms that Indonesia is looking forward to make not only the government, but the Indonesian attitude, the Indonesian society being, dare or not want to do the corruption itself.
REZKI, are you just as happy with the success that Angelina has talked about?
There was some point there that the Indonesian people now it's getting more scared to do corruption. This is something I don't really believe it. That even now the Indonesian people, the corruption, the corruptors, they are now it's getting more worse and worse. They obviously do the corruption. The two things.
In what way?
Let me. There's one.
Well, what evidence do you have that there is more corruption now than there was in so much period?
I'll talk about first about this things about the gap between the court decision, for instance. Okay, there's a lot of the MPs now being detained, but as we know, there is a strong gap between what has been, alleged and what is the penalty for that? How much years they will get for that? That's the first. And people knows that there's a big gap on that in the court decision, for instance. Because of what? Because the judicial system in Indonesia is so corrupt. One of our research even said that from the interaction of corruption between which institution has been, whether they are asked for the bribe or they are offered the bribe. For instance, 100% of our respondents say that they 100% when they come to the judicial business, they are asked to do the bribe. 100% of it.
But I think if we never started, to make these issues on the spot, and then Indonesian people will go, goes with the flow and then goes corrupt everywhere. So I think we really have also to admit that there is an improvement of Indonesian anti-corruption.
So Angelina, what you're saying is this is a start, basically, and Indonesia has a long journey to go in terms of trying to root out
at least
corruption.
SBY is putting a foundation for it, and everybody
how about
aware
the stripping
of that.
down of the anti-corruption special court, for instance? The corruptors fight back on this.
But actually, if we are looking, it's not only the executive branch, it's not only the legislative branch, but in the court also, there is some of the, people have been busted there also. So, and it never been happened in Indonesia before. So I think whether it's, it's not excellent, it's not perfect, but we have to admit that there is an improvement of bringing the corruption in the service you know, and at least Indonesia and MPs are trying to give more state budget to make the clean and good governance.
Eduardo, let me just throw this question to you. Ultimately, corruption really means trying to get more money. If not money, more money, then more power or so. How much is it connected to the salaries of civil servants?
Greed knows no bounds. Salaries matter when, if you have a policeman whose job is to enforce the law, but he gets, what, $10 a day, salaries matter. Okay? If you pay a politician $1 million, but greed knows no bounds, and salaries doesn't matter on that end. So yes, salaries matter on a certain group of individuals. It reduces the temptation for probably small crimes. But even for highly paid salaries like politicians in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, corruption is all over the place. So it's not just a function of salary. It's necessary but not sufficient.
I want to move on and talk about KPK cracking down on corruption in Indonesia. But Eduardo, really, KPK has to work in this very tight knit of politicians, of businessmen. Corrupt systems have already been in place for years and years and years. REZKI, as you mentioned yourself. There are challenges that KPK has to face. If they indict one person, then their allies have to be indicted, and their allies too have been indicted. Is this the case throughout Asia as well?
Yes, it's a problem of one finger pointing at you and three fingers pointing back at you. And everybody's finger pointing, exactly, and everybody's in the system is guilty. My real question is, can there truly be a truly independent corruption commission? Anti-corruption commission? Yes, take the case of Hong Kong. It took Hong Kong about 70 years before they were able to root out corruption. It was systemic. It was a way of life. Giving bribery, it's a way of life. It was deeply ingrained, but it took them 70 years, up and down, spurts, come and go, and eventually in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a concerted effort for about 8-year period that they were able to finally break free from systemic corruption. So yes, it is possible to break free from, if you have the right ingredients, leadership, and so on. And the principles are well known all over the place, and it will take time. Now, Singapore, Indonesia has been doing this for the last few years. So put that in the context of Hong Kong, 70 years. So it will take time, determined effort, but it's a structural problem. Okay? So you need to fix the judiciary, you need to fix the investigation, you need to fix the prosecution, you need to educate the public, you need to increase salaries, you need to stamp out discretions, and so on. There's a lot of things to be fixed.
I agree with that. You know, it takes process and it takes time.
Mr. REZKI, can I just give you the last say really here? And as Eduardo pointed out, there is so many things you have to attend to. The judicial system, educating the public, making sure that people are there to enforce the law. If you could say, what then would be the main ingredient or the key success to truly rooting out corruption?
Judiciary. Judiciary, I guess that's the most problematic institution in Indonesia. And also because the judiciary is the one who making the law, is also making certainty in Indonesia. Well, if the certainty is not there, and also the law is not there, then what can we expect from a country? Because the judiciary is, I think, one of the most corrupt element in Indonesia. I guess addressing the judiciary corruption is also one of the important things that need to be addressed in Indonesia.
I agree with that. I fully agree with that. And I think now we are working on that too. That's why we double up the state budget for the judiciary in order to watch over how they work. And we hopefully, you know, within this, you know, like let's say like 5 or 10 years later, we can achieve what we want.
Let me summarize in 2 simple words what would be a good formula to fight corruption. It is swift and sure. If it is swift, that means good prosecution, good investigation, and sure means good prosecution. They will be convicted. So you have to fix the investigative side, you have to fix the prosecution side and the conviction side, and that strikes fear into the hearts of the corrupt. Then that will change the game.
And we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have from all of us here in Jakarta. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.